So I gave it up for Lent. So I'm having some Lapsang Souchong Star, which is a delicious smoky tea. And I put it right here on purpose, so I could have it at the earliest possible moment. It has nothing to do with my sermon. So we, as a culture, have a problem with the resurrection. There's a lot of different problems, but I want to try to get at one of the big ones. We live in a modern age, although it's no different than any other age, in that God has absolutely no problem lowering God's self to be where we are. Music is a good example. God is delighted to be found in the profound works of Palestrina and Allegri and Brahms, and God is just as comfortable being in ridiculous music of every single kind. Some of it's fantastic. Some music is fantastic in the popular sphere. If you've ever been to a U2 concert, there's very little to distinguish a U2 concert, a Mumford & Sons concert, from a classic old-time revival. Right? The same spirit is there. And I may have mentioned this before. I remember being in a hospital in Tennessee, and it was very obvious to me and to the woman that I was visiting that God had visited her at 3 o'clock in the morning through a televangelist. And God will go far deeper than I will ever go in all kinds of media and ways to the profoundly tacky to meet us where we are. And so all of us in this room have had one experience or another of holiness, and some of us can relate divine moments of intervention, and some of us will tell stories of beautiful simplicity or profound tackiness through which God has reached each of us. God doesn't care. God doesn't care how God gets to us as long as God gets to us. I think that's been most of our experience. Am I right? Okay. But this creates a problem and a challenge for us when we encounter the resurrection. Because while each of us come to this place with a sense of the holy and a special relationship with God that is in a lot of ways unique, the resurrection is anything but unique, and it's anything but vague. It's very specific. It's a very specific story about a very specific group of people who are all named, who encountered Jesus, who was a specific guy. He lived in Galilee. His name was Jesus. And he liked eating fish. And he liked going from place to place. And he didn't seem to own a house. Or he mostly mooched off of other people. And he was a homeless guy. And they followed him around, and we have an account of his life, and we know what his friends were like. And they all wrote down different accounts of what Jesus was like and who Jesus was. And they have this story of the resurrection, and they're absolutely convinced. And the resurrection story is a story that fits with the ancient world, and as much as it fits with ours, it was just as strange and crazy sounding then as it's strange and crazy sounding now. And it's very specific. We were in the upper room, and then Jesus came, and he visited us, and he wasn't a ghost. They're specific about that. He wasn't a ghost. He was a person, and he ate and drank with us, and we saw his wounds, and we felt his wounds, and, he didn't die. And now he is with us and is alive with God forever. Very specific. And so we have a problem with that even among spiritual and God-fearing people in our culture, because we have very unique and strange and special experiences of God that often fit very well with our world. And then we have this resurrection story that seems to be completely strange and doesn't seem to fit with how we see the world. Right? Yes. Well, that's how I see it. And I'm preaching. But the reality is, each of our experiences, and often we are unaware of this because we keep so many of these stories private and to ourselves, often because God visited us in an embarrassing or tacky moment, so they're not the most enlightening or enriching stories to tell. They're kind of embarrassing stories usually, because we've usually done something really stupid when God's visited us. In each of these embarrassing stories, without exception, God visits us in a form of love. It's unmistakable. It's something in our gut that we feel. And this love binds us together as Christians. It looks different on the surface, but God always encounters us in one form or another with love, usually followed very closely by faith and hope. We often have a renewed sense that everything is going to be all right. We have hope. We have faith in ourselves, faith in the world, faith in God. We are bound together by the very essence, the gut, the kernel of each of these stories. And the reason why the resurrection is so profound for us, the reason why we are Christians, why our faith is sometimes embarrassingly specific, is because what binds us all together is not just the essence of love, but the story of Jesus. The way that Jesus talked about God and lived his life was as God lives. The life of Jesus. Each one of our stories echoes his continuing life in the church and in us. It is as if these stories or these events in our lives are a part of a grand 2,000-year-long symphony or story with chapter after chapter, where each instrument might be different, but they are all in harmony together, singing one song. And this is profound because sometimes these experiences of the holy can make us very isolated and alone, as if we have some kind of relationship with God and everyone else around us thinks we're crazy. When the reality is we are all bound together in love. The very essence of each of our stories follows in the footsteps of Christ, who did not die, but continues to live in each of us. It also protects us, because there are others in this world who said, I had an experience of God and it led me to hate. I had an experience of God that led me to violence. And if we just have our one story, talking to their one story, we say, well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. My God's a God of love, your God's a God of hate. But as a church, we can say, you know what? We have all, as a church, experienced a loving God. And we're part of a community that's been going on for not just 2,000 years, but throughout the history of the people of Israel. And every time God met them in love. I'm not sure this God that you're describing that led you to hate, I don't think that's God. There's something else going on. And we can say that together with one voice as Christians. We have all shared a common story with many instruments, many voices, many chapters, but we have all encountered in different ways the resurrected Christ found in love, in faith, in life, not death. And these experiences keep us alive and moving and never die, but continue on. We continue together as an unending chorus of lives and love and voices. And the resurrection binds us together. So I want to wish you all a happy Easter. I hope you can all celebrate the resurrection, celebrate God's presence in your midst, celebrate the crazy ways that God has encountered each of you, these private or possibly very public moments of divine revelation, but also rejoice with us that our stories are bound together in love, in faith, in hope, in the life of Jesus, that we are all bound together in love. Amen.